seen Batman, we've seen Superman. We know there's a Justice League movie coming, so it ain't gonna just be those three. Who else is gonna be in the Justice League movie?
Watching the development of the Justice League movie in real time was like watching your parents divorce. The periods from 2014 to 2017 was a different time for DC fans when it came to film. This was an exciting era where we all collectively anticipated the upcoming DC films in this brand new cinematic universe, especially Justice League, a project fans had dreamed of for years. However, as development began for this project, fans began to notice that there was something odd about this film. News about the project didn't make much sense, and thanks to the dwindling success of DC's films at the time, it became clear that perhaps Justice League wouldn't be the dream project we had expected. In response to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Warner Bros. Began development on a Justice League movie in 2012, hoping to get the film rolling for a 2015 release. This was strange, considering that Man of Steel was the only DC film in development at this point, meaning that Warner was clearly trying to rush out a Justice League movie to compete with Marvel Studios, instead of building out a series of solo DC projects. By June 2013, we'd learned that David Goyer had signed a 3-picture deal with Warner Bros. He'd first develop a script for Man of Steel 2, and then a Justice League movie with Superman taking on a major role, though a Justice League film would only move forward if Man of Steel was a big enough success to warrant it. Strangely, on April 24th of 2014, it would be announced that actor Ray Fisher would play Cyborg in Batman v Superman, though his role would be small. To many people at the time, it was clear that perhaps Warner Bros. Was trying to set up members of the Justice League as soon as possible, especially since Wonder Woman was only cast a few months prior. By April 27th of 2014, it would be announced that Zack Snyder would helm a Justice League movie, which would begin production after his new Batman and Superman-centric film had released. By June, we'd also learn that Jason Momoa was cast as Aquaman, a choice that seemed fitting as many believed Snyder was clearly going for a very specific appearance for the character. By October, there would be a shareholders call by WB executives, and here we'd receive the upcoming slate for the DCEU films. It's in this slate where we learned that the Justice League movie would be titled Justice League Part 1, meaning that perhaps this film would be a 2-part story. It's during this event where we'd learn that Ezra Miller was cast as the Flash for the upcoming Flash movie in 2018. However, obviously they're not gonna film a movie years in advance, so it likely meant that he'd debut in Batman v Superman. There would be a rumor that Batman v Superman and Justice League would film back to back, which explains why they casted so many League members early in production. Finally, on February 19th of 2015, Zack Snyder would post a photo of Jason Momoa's Aquaman, revealing how he would look like within the movie. However, we'd also have the words "Unite the Seven" on the image, not only teasing the Justice League, but also what the tagline of the film would be, years before we saw any official material for the film. In January 2016, the CW would broadcast a 22-minute TV special called Dawn of the Justice League. The TV program was meant to promote DC's upcoming films and showcase DC's plans for their cinematic universe, including their new movies they had in store that would lead into their Justice League film and beyond. Here, they would show what appeared to be early conceptual artwork for the Justice League characters like the Flash and Cyborg, perhaps revealing the fact that these characters were already active as heroes in this world. By February, we'd learned that WB had fast-tracked the filming of Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 1, which would begin filming 2 months later in April, only a few weeks after Batman v Superman's release. This was WB's clear attempt to immediately fast-track the development of their universe, with multiple solo films to follow after it, leading into Justice League Part 2, which had a 2019 release schedule. By the release of Batman v Superman, fans finally got to see the Justice League characters on screen for the first time. There was also a scene of the Flash speaking to Batman from the future, which perhaps was teasing the plot of the Justice League film. But there was no way for us to know that for sure. We would get more news leading up towards May, which gave fans a bad sign on what was to come. Hollywood Reporter would release an article giving an update on the status of the DCEU. Supposedly Warner were upset by the reception of their DC films and would create a new division within the studio called DC Films. This would now be overseen by John Berg and Jeff Johns, thanks to their success with other projects, especially the CW shows. Warner tasked them with making sure the upcoming DC films were up to a certain standard of quality. It was reported that John Berg would now be in charge of overseeing the day-to-day production of Justice League, but by this point, we had little to no evidence regarding the film's quality, though Jeremy Irons in May would have an interview with The Wrap stating that Justice League's plot would not be as messy as Batman v Superman. San Diego Comic-Con is where the hype for Justice League really hit an all-time high. At the event, Zack Snyder would appear at the panel with every major cast member for the film alongside Henry Cavill. Many creatives from the world of DC would hype up this day, including Ben Affleck. It's here at Comic-Con where official material would begin releasing for the movie, like the first poster for the film. At this event as well, to many people's surprise, we'd get our first trailer for Justice League, as WB would post a trailer online for everyone to see, something they've never done before, meaning that people this time around no longer had to leak the trailers online. In September 2016, we'd learn from a report by the Wall Street Journal that Warner Brothers were shifting directions when it came to the tone of their DC films. According to Jeff Johns, DC's approach of making more dark and gritty films was misguided, and it was time to bring hope and optimism to the movies. John Berg would also state during the interview that they reworked Justice League to bring more hope and optimism to the audience sooner. This does mean that they were heavily tweaking and messing with the film's production. Soon after this, Snyder would post an image of himself working on storyboards for the movie. However, fans managed to edit the photo to get a closer look at the board. Many realized that Snyder had intentionally leaked the presence of Deathstroke in the movie, who was likely being set up for Ben Affleck's Batman film, which would begin production soon. By October 1st, filming would officially wrap for Justice League, with stars like Jason Momoa congratulating the cast on the production. Zack Snyder himself would also post a video celebrating the film wrapping production, and by this point, there was a lot of optimism about the movie, though the earlier news about the film being reworked to be lighter still bothered many people. With the conclusion of the film wrapping production, a photo of Amber Heard's Mera would also be released, alongside pieces of concept art for her character as well. All in all, there was no immediate worries that something happened with Zack Snyder's film, especially since the second trailer didn't reveal any immediate shifts in the tone or style. On May 22nd of 2017, we received news that Zack Snyder had stepped down from directing the film due to a family tragedy. In order to spend time healing, Snyder decided to postpone his work on Justice League's post-production and the additional reshoots that were scheduled to take place. However, despite Snyder leaving the project, the film would still continue development under the direction of Joss Whedon. Supposedly, Snyder had brought on Whedon himself, who was now tasked with following a roadmap that Snyder outlined. Whedon would now oversee the additional photography for the movie, but WB did assure fans that not only would the reshoots not be too extensive, but they'd closely adhere to Zack Snyder's style. However, cracks immediately began to form. By June 14th of 2017, here we'd learned that Danny Elfman would be brought in to replace Junkie XL as composer. Why were they getting a new composer for the movie, despite the fact that they stated the film would maintain the same kind of style as Zack Snyder's film. The choice of bringing on a new composer hinted at a shift in the film's direction much larger than WB had indicated. On July 22, 2017, a sneak peek from Comic-Con would be shown, which gave us our first look into the reshoots the film underwent. Though it was difficult to notice what exactly got changed, some things were far too obvious not to notice, like the new addition of the red sky, which wasn't present in the previous trailers. This did indicate there was going to be a massive visual overhaul of the movie, which was now much brighter and more colorful than Zack Snyder's film. So by July 24th, we'd realize that something odd was going on with the production of this film. Despite the fact that they were only supposed to do quick reshoots and additional photography, the film's production had dragged for 2 months at this point. Not only that, according to Variety, the budget for these additional reshoots was about $20 million, a strange number considering the reshoots usually only cost $6 to $10 million. The $20 million price tag suggested that Warner Brothers were doing much more extensive reshoots that they were clearly trying to hide. We learned that the production was chaotic. Not only were they replacing some scenes filmed by Zack Snyder, but dialogue was also being reworked, and Henry Cavill had to dart between the production of this film and Mission Impossible. Supposedly, he couldn't shave his mustache for the reshoots, meaning that the production team would have to remove the mustache through CGI. Of course, many fans at this point panicked about the film's production, though Ray Fisher a few days ago at Comic-Con did reassure fans that the reshoots weren't that extensive.
No, I think we're just about finished with everything. They've been brief, if anything. But yeah, I mean, Joss is a great guy, and Zach picked a good person to come in and clean up and finish up for him.
We'd get the final trailer for the film come October 8th. The trailer showed more humor, more colorful visuals, and Superman made his very first appearance, as it was clear by this point that Warner were clearly trying their best to hide Superman's presence as much as possible. We'd learn a lot of news about Justice League's production by November 6th of 2017. According to the Wall Street Journal, Warner Brothers CEO Kevin Sugihara had mandated for the film to be below 2 hours long, though it was unclear why this mandate was a thing. We all know the rest of the story by now. Justice League effectively spelled the end for DC's attempt at a connected universe, sparking a new era of disconnected films for the foreseeable future. There were rumblings about an alternate cut of the movie that could possibly exist.